Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network and host of the African History Network show. It is Sunday, June 23rd, 2024, and we are live. I wanted to come on and talk about my new online history course that is starting up today. I'm getting ready to jump off of here and start teaching this class. It's called Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. So this is an exciting 10-week online course that I'm teaching. I wanted to come on and give you all a brief overview of the class. Okay, so this class focuses in on history from 1800 to 1968 till about 1971 with the start of the war on drugs, declared June 17th, 1971 by Richard Nixon. Okay. And this class focuses on what leads up to the Civil War taking place. What are some of the laws and policies put in place that lead us to where we are right now? We deal with the Jim Crow era, the Reconstruction era, in the aftermath of the insurrection that we saw on January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol. Many leading historians drew parallels between the violence that we saw January 6, 2021 and the Reconstruction era, which is from 1865 to 1877. Okay, the Reconstruction era, right after slavery ended. The period of political revolution directly following the American Civil War. This was the Reconstruction era, and is going to be partly because of political violence that brings about an end to the Reconstruction era. And we also know that we have the Compromise of 1877 as well, where Rutherford B. Hayes is declared president, the Republican, and he agrees to the Democrats' demands to remove the Union troops out of the South. Okay. Now, this 10-week online history course will analyze U.S. history primarily from the African-American perspective, beginning in the period 1800 to 1865. But one of the things that we're going to highlight in this class is Black resistance and how we fought back to white supremacy and racism. Okay. This course looks at different ways African Americans fought back against racism between 1800 to 1968. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. We'll analyze U.S. history primarily from the African American perspective, beginning with the Haitian Revolution, which is 1791 to 1804, and the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, because the Louisiana Purchase of 1803 and the Haitian Revolution, those two events are related. And we know that the Louisiana Purchase is going to double the size of the U.S. at the time. And the U.S. is going to get 828,000 square miles of land from France. And one of the reasons why France sold this land is because France and Napoleon and were getting their behinds kicked by the Haitians in their colony of Saint Dominique that those Africans are going to call Haiti. Okay, and then we call it Haiti. And Haiti is the Arawak word for that island nation of Haiti. Okay, this is where that comes from, Haiti. And we talked about this in my class, the class that I taught yesterday, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That Haiti is an indigenous Arawak word, which means mountainous land, so we're going to deal with this history, and then you could trace that history of the island of Hispaniola, or what Christopher Columbus called La Isla Española, the Spanish island, and the word is anglicized to Hispaniola. And the island of Hispaniola is where you have the Dominican Republic and the Spanish colony of Santo Domingo, which the French take over that Spanish colony of Santo Domingo in 1697 and call it Saint Dominique, and that's where Haiti is today. Okay, so when we look at this history, even though we're looking at history from 1800 to 1968, we can trace this history back to the Moors going into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD, and what happens after that. Because we know it's August 3rd, 1492, that Columbus set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and he's financed by Spain and King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. We know on August 2nd, 1492, Spain expels the Sephardim, the Sephardic Jews, and we know on January 2nd, 1492, during the Spanish-Grenadian Wars, the Moors lose control of their last stronghold in Spain, which was Grenada. Okay, so we see a chronology of all of this history. And then we see the Louisiana Purchase, which doubles the territory of the United States. The U.S. is going to carve out about 15 states out of that land they get from France. And France did not legally own that land. This is stolen land they got from Native Americans as well as African people who were already here as well. And we know from reading Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, we know African people were here in this land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay, so, you know, this is already a given. Okay, so what we're going to see here in this class is a chronology of this history and what leads to the U.S. Civil War taking place. We'll look at things like the Missouri Compromise of 1820, okay, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. And after we look at the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. And after the Civil War ends with the, General Robert E. Lee surrenders to General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, April 9th, 1865. And then you have June 19th, 1865, Juneteenth. But as we will look at in this class, we know that the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. Okay, the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. We know that the border states of Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, and Delaware, they were all exempt from General Order Number 3. Okay, delivered by Major General Gordon Granger. And, we just commemorated Juneteenth, and we should celebrate Juneteenth. But as you saw in the videos from my presentations for Juneteenth 2024, I said that we have to protect the history of Juneteenth and correct the history of Juneteenth. And June 19th, 1865, when those enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas, got the word that they were freed, that was not the last day of slavery, because Kentucky and Delaware did not abolish slavery until December 18th, 1865. And that is when the 13th Amendment was adopted. We know that when Georgia ratifies the 13th Amendment, December 6, 1865, Georgia becomes the 27th state to ratify the 13th Amendment, and it becomes law, and it's adopted December 18th. So Kentucky and Delaware did not abolish slavery until 6 months after Juneteenth. So how could Juneteenth be the last day of slavery? Okay, so what a lot of these reports that you hear in the media are basically false about Juneteenth. Okay, so we go through and we look at some of these original documents. We look at the U.S. Constitution, Emancipation Proclamation, things of this nature. And the Reconstruction era is a very, very important period of history that's not talked about a lot in schools. Okay, and Americans, number one, are very ignorant of history, but Americans know very little about the Reconstruction era as well. You can register for this class because I'm going to jump off here and jump into the class right now, the online school, and start teaching the intro to the class. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Scroll down past the first online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understand the Transatlantic Slave Trade. You can still register for that class. But this new one right here, Black Resistance Movements, this really ties into the political climate what we see going on in America right now, the backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion, the resistance against any type of reparative justice or reparations, the attack on voting rights as well, the January 6, 2021 insurrection, which was political violence. All of this is what we see, the seeds of all this during this period of time from 1800 to 1970. Okay, so this 10-week online course, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. You can register right here for it. Click right here, register for full course. It's on sale, $80. You can register for both classes. We have a bundle pack for $120. It's about a $300 value. There's going to be some bonus content. You're going to get my Juneteenth lecture free when you register for this new class as well, Black Resistance Movements. Okay, so visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. and register for it, and we'll see you in class. I want to go back to this PowerPoint presentation. These are some of the actual slides from the class. There are 80 to 100 articles that we look at in this course, and there are numerous slides that I put together for this class as well. There's 2 binders full of articles that I teach, because it's really close to about 100 articles that we look at here. So we go through, we look at the 13th Amendment. Now, contrary to popular belief, people think the 13th Amendment has an exception clause because it says, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So people are under this misconception, oh, well, this is why you have mass incarceration, because of the 13th Amendment. No, that's false, okay? What is the 13th Amendment? What law is the 13th Amendment based upon? The 13th Amendment is based upon what's known as the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787 dealt with the Northwest Territory. It dealt with Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. The Northwest Territory is one of the main reasons why the Northwest Ordinance, I should say, the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 is one of the main reasons why places like Michigan, where I live, had very low levels of slavery, because the Northwest Ordinance basically abolishes slavery in the Northwest Territory. And when I did my presentation for the Detroit Reparations Task Force on March 2nd, 2024, some of you all have seen the video of that lecture because I've been rebroadcasting it on my social media platforms. I talk about the Northwest Ordinance there, officially titled An Ordinance for the Government of the Territory of the United States, Northwest of the River Ohio. The Northwest Ordinance was adopted on July 13, 1787 by the Confederation Congress. Okay, this is the same Congress. This is who drafts the U.S. Constitution. Okay, in 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention, the Confederation Congress, the one house legislature operating under the Articles of the Confederation. So the Northwest Ordinance chartered a government for the Northwest Territory, provided a method for admitting new states to the Union from the territory, and listed a Bill of Rights guaranteed in the territory. And one of the things that it did was basically forbade slavery. A Bill of Rights protecting religious freedom, the right to a writ of habeas corpus, that means having your day in court before, being convicted, the benefit of a trial by jury, and other individual rights. In addition, the accordance encouraged education and forbade slavery. So this is why, like in 1832, Michigan had in 1830, the U.S. Census showed Michigan only had 32 slaves. In 1773, we know Detroit had 73 slaves. Okay. But after that, in 1787, you're going to see a drastic decline in the number of slaves that the Michigan Territory has. And then Michigan becomes a state in the Union in 1837. And it gets admitted to the Union as a free state. So this is why I said that the people that, even though slavery did exist in Michigan, there was very low levels of it. And also many of the numbers that you see talking about the number of slaves in Michigan, that also included Native American slaves. And at one point, Native American slaves outnumbered African slaves 3-1. So this is why when we talk about reparative justice, we have to specifically understand the history of the city or state that we're talking about. We can't just run around talking about slavery, slavery, slavery. You owe us $17 trillion. That's not going to work. Yeah, I mean, go watch my presentation. I got deep into this. Okay, so so we go through and take you throughout history. We look at the Reconstruction era, right? The Reconstruction era is not talked about a lot in schools. And there was a excellent article from time.com, Time magazine, that I use in the class. And it deals with how schools are not teaching about the Reconstruction era. And the Reconstruction era is extremely important to understand because it helps us better to contextualize what is taking place right now. What is taking place right now? The attack on critical race theory, okay? The banning of books that are taking place, especially books dealing with the history of slavery and the civil rights movement, things of this nature. And then you have the initiative to reshape the federal bench, the federal courts, and the U.S. Supreme Court into an ultra-conservative court as well. So we see all this continuation, all these political fights, things like this coming from the Reconstruction era and going into the Jim Crow era. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. Now, this is an excellent article from January 12, 2022 by Olivia B. Waxman for Time magazine. And this was basically a year and 6 days after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. In this article, it says in the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago at the U.S. Capitol, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence that we saw January 6, 2021 and the Reconstruction era, the period of political revolution directly following the American U.S. Civil War. So Civil War is 1861 to 1865. Quote, now, Eric Foner is one of the top historians when it comes to the Reconstruction era, okay? Historian Eric Foner said, quote, the events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era, okay? The events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials. So whether we have like the Clinton, Mississippi riot of 1875, where President Ulysses S. Grant refused to intervene. He implemented his non-intervention policy, but he intervened in 1871 using the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, and he cracked down on Ku Klux Klan activity in South Carolina. He declared martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina, and this is after Congress passed the third of the enforcement acts, and this one is section 241 of U.S. Code, is known as the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. Okay, now Eric Foner is the author of the book Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. He said this in an interview with the New Yorker magazine published a week after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Now, scholars say studying the aftermath of the U.S. Civil War can help put into context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent years, from the brutal murder of George Floyd, May 25th, 2020, okay, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, by Derek Chauvin, to the voter suppression laws enacted after African-American voters played a big role in helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president and vice president in 2020. But despite the timeliness of the era in today's climate, many students in American schools will not get a full education on Reconstruction until they get to college. But majority of them are not going to go to college. The Reconstruction era, understanding this is why I when I talk about Juneteenth, I say we can't deal with just one day in history. Juneteenth leads you to the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877. It leads you to the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which allows African Americans to enter into legal contracts and negotiate wages. And it's the Civil Rights Act of 1866 that's being used against us now in these anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion lawsuits that white conservative Ed Bloom is filing. He filed it against the Fearless Fund, the African American women who give out grants to businesses of women of color. And Ed Bloom is saying that they're discriminating against white business owners. It played a part also when we deal with the affirmative action being overturned in college admissions. That was Ed Bloom, conservative activist Ed Bloom, who filed that lawsuit once again. So one of these Reconstruction laws and the 1866 Civil Rights Act, that was the foundation of the 14th Amendment of 1868. Now you have these white supremacists using these laws against us that were created for us. And this is why we have to understand this history and understand, and your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. Okay. And this is why I say we have to practice political self-defense. Understanding how these laws and policies impact African Americans, impact our economic condition, how to weaponize our vote, how to fight back against these people, take them out of power, vote them out of office, and understanding how to protect gains that have already been made. If you don't understand history, you don't understand the gains that have been made. The attack on voting rights, Senate Bill 201, okay, coming out of Georgia. That's very similar to the attack on voting rights, African-American voting rights that we saw at the Mississippi State Constitution, the Mississippi State Convention in 1890, okay, shortly after Reconstruction ends. And they're rewriting the Mississippi State Constitution to oppose poll taxes and literacy tests, to suppress, it was specifically designed to suppress the African-American vote. There's an excellent article from the Washington Post called "The Mississippi Plan to Keep Blacks from Voting in 1890. Quote, "We came here to exclude the Negro," end quote. Now, that quote, "We came here to exclude the Negro," is a direct quote from Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who was the white county judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention. And he said, "Let's tell the truth if it bursts the bottom of the universe. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer." Because African Americans were the majority of the population in Mississippi, and we were the majority of the voters. Okay. So they're trying to take back power. They imposed, the delegates eventually adopted a literacy test and a poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in the state with a black majority. The Mississippi Plan became the model throughout the South, part of a raft of racially oppressive Jim Crow laws that ended Reconstruction. What you're going to see is other states adopt similar laws. South Carolina, 1895, Louisiana, 1898, Alabama, 1901. You're going to see Georgia, Oklahoma. It's the same thing that happened after Senate Bill 201 passed. Okay. Out of Georgia, other states, especially many of these former Confederate states, they started passing similar bills. Okay. And what are they doing? They're cracking down on mail-in ballots, okay? And they're trying to find ways to suppress the votes of African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, white college students as well. It's not just targeting African Americans. We are the main target, though, because we have historically been targeted, because there has always been a fear of African American political power in this country. Read the article from motherjones.com. Now, you know I'm a national political commentator. You see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered every Friday. You see me on the African History Network show. I just did Attorney Areva Martin show this week as well, this past week. You know, she's a CNN legal analyst, Areva Martin. So I was on her radio show on 1580 AM KBLA out of Southern California, which is Tavis Smiley's radio station. I did the Carl Nelson show on WOLB Baltimore, Radio 1. I did his show on Monday, June 17th. We dealt with Juneteenth history and politics and the 2024 presidential election, etc. Look at this article right here, May 13th, 2021. Leaked video, Dark Money Group brags about writing GOP voter suppression bill across the country. Quote, we did it quickly and we did it quietly, end quote, said the executive director of Heritage Action. Now, this is an excellent article that I use in my classes. This is written by Ari Berman and Nick Sergey. Ari Berman used to write for thenation.com, and during the 2016 presidential election, Ari Berman wrote a series of articles dealing with the voter suppression that was taking place during the 2016 presidential campaign. And he has one article that deals with how there are 868 fewer polling places to vote at in the 2016 campaign. That's a direct result of Shelby County versus Holder, U.S. Supreme Court case of 2013, which gutted Section 5 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Well, the reason why you needed the 1965 Voting Rights Act is because of what happened in Mississippi in 1890 at the Mississippi State Convention, and what happened in Florida in 1889 when Florida was the first state to have poll taxes, and what happened in South Carolina, in Georgia, in Alabama, when they rewrote their state constitutions. This is why you needed the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And you've had white supremacists who've been trying to weaken the 1965 Voting Rights Act or revoke it altogether, basically since it was implemented. So quickly here, when we look at this piece from Mother Jones, okay, how many of you all know this? Senate Bill 201 was crafted by Heritage Action for America. Here's what happened. In a private meeting last month with big money donors, the head of a top conservative group boasted, I want everybody to see this. We're going to zoom in on this. The head of a top conservative group boasted that her outfit had crafted the new voter suppression law in Georgia and was doing the same with similar bills for Republican state legislators across the country. They did it with Senate Bill 201 in Georgia, and they did it with other similar bills in Republican state legislators across the country. Quote, in some cases, we actually draft them for them, end quote, she said, or we have a sentinel on our behalf, give them the model legislation so it has that grassroots from the bottom up type of vibe, end quote. The Georgia law had, quote, 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended. Jessica Anderson, the executive director of Heritage Action for America, a sister organization to the Heritage Foundation, told the foundation's donors at an April 22nd gathering in Tucson, Arizona, in a recording obtained by the watchdog group Documented and shared with Mother Jones. Those included policies severely restricting mail ballot drop boxes, preventing election officials from sending absentee ballot request forms to voters, making it easier for partisan workers to monitor the polls, preventing the collection of mail ballots, and restricting the ability of counties to accept donations from nonprofit groups seeking to aid in election administration. Okay, now this law was signed into law by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and when he signed it, he was in a room with all white men, and he's sitting down at the desk, and above him is a painting of a slave plantation. Go research this when they did this, okay? But check this out. It gets deeper. Do you know who the Heritage Foundation is? The Heritage Foundation is an ultra right-wing conservative think tank, and they're the ones who engineered Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation. Have you heard about Project 2025? All of this stuff, all the history and politics is connected. This is what we deal with in this class. This is why I had to create this class, because the first course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. So we deal with history going back thousands of years and deal with what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade. And we deal with the transatlantic slave trade like globally, and then deal with it here in the U.S. And, you know, we leave off like in the early 1800s. But I realized That crucial period of time from 1800 to 1970 or so, we really have to focus in to understand what happened during that period of time, because that puts us on a direct trajectory to where we are today, especially the collapse of Reconstruction and then going into the Jim Crow era. We look at the Lily White movement in 1928, which was the effort of Republicans to push African Americans out of the Republican Party, going back to 1928, when Republicans appealed to Southern segregationist Democrats in 5 former Confederate states to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover, who was the 1928 Republican candidate for president, and Herbert Hoover won. We know Herbert Hoover mishandled the Great Depression and loses to Franklin Roosevelt in the 1932 presidential election. Okay, so we get to see a chronology of all this history. But Project 2025, and I talked about it when I was on Carl Nelson's show. We talked about it on, we've been talking about it on Roland Martin Unfiltered as well. But if you take a look at this, this is a 900 plus plan dealing with ultra right-wing policies that conservatives want to get put in place. And you have about 100 of these right-wing organizations that are signed on to Project 2025. I'm pulling up here an article. Okay, now there's numerous articles on this. Here's one from USA Today. If you haven't heard about Project 2025, you got to go research this. What is Project 2025? The Presidential Transition Project Explained. Now, this is from June 10th, 2024 from USA Today. This deals with giving more power to the president. This deals with getting rid of the Department of Education. This deals with the nationwide ban on abortion. This deals with weaponizing the Department of Justice as well. I mean, this stuff is deep. This deals with politicizing federal employees and getting rid of thousands of federal employees and implementing a loyalty pledge as well to be a federal employee. What is Project 2025? The Presidential Transition Project Explained. This is from the USA Today. The detailed plan to dismantle and reconstruct the government laid out by conservative groups known as the 2025 Presidential Transition Project has critics up in arms over its apocalyptic and authoritarian nature. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., led an effort to create the more than 900-page Mandate for Leadership published in April 2023. So this is the type of planning these people are doing. Reimagining the executive branch, and presented a plan to overhaul several government agencies, including the FBI, for the country's next conservative president to follow. Now, the Heritage Foundation did something similar in 1980 with their Mandate for Leadership. And and that was a book in 1980 that contained 2,000 policies they wanted the Reagan administration to adopt. The Reagan administration adopted 60% of those policies in the first administration of Ronald Reagan. And these were a lot of anti-African American policies. These policies calling for smaller government, attacking poverty programs, all different types of negative things like this. According to the project's website, the playbook provides a governing agenda and a lineup of people ready to implement it to, quote, rescue the country from the grip of the radical left. Rescue the country from the grip of the radical left. It includes a domestic and foreign policy agenda, a list of personnel, training, and a 180-day playbook. Read the rest of this here, dealing with Project 2025. Okay, there are numerous articles on this, and let me pull up something here. This is one from, let's see. This is one from oh, I'm not going to pull up that one. That's a video. This is one from Newsweek.com. Now, this is the ex-Republican National Committee chair. This is Michael Steele, who's African-American. And he's confronting, so on the weekend on MSNBC, co-hosted by Michael Steele, they just had the guy who's the head of the Heritage Foundation on the show. They had him on this weekend. It was Saturday. They had him on Saturday, June 22nd. Ex-RNC chair confronts Republican on Project 2025 plan to gut government, 2024. Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, confronted Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation, on Saturday over Project 2025, a plan that includes firing up to 50,000 federal government workers. A plan that includes firing up to 50,000 federal government workers. Now, African Americans make up 18.4% of the 370,000 federal employees. So when you talk about firing 50,000 federal government workers, you're talking about firing a lot of African Americans. In August 2023, conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, in collaboration with other right-leaning groups, published its Project 2025. According to its official website, the project aims to pave the way for an effective conservative administration by using a policy agenda, personnel, training, and a 180-day playbook should the GOP win the 2024 election, should Donald Trump win. This is what they're saying. Proposals include reintroducing legislation making it easier to fire federal employees, prosecution for distributing abortion pills by mail, and abolishing recently established diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI initiatives at the Department of Defense. However, one of the most significant proposals is a plan to reintroduce Schedule F, a Trump-era executive order rescinded by President Joe Biden. Okay, research Schedule F. The Schedule F employees, rescinded by President Joe Biden, that would see tens of thousands of federal workers reclassified, making them easier to fire. Once again, African Americans are 18.4% of federal employees. While the Trump campaign has previously said outside groups do not speak for the former president, Project 2025's 1,000-page proposal was drafted with input from a long list of former Trump administration officials who are poised to fill top ranks of a potential new administration, according to the Associated Press. Newsweek has reached out to Trump's campaign via email for comment. Now, during Saturday's MSNBC's The Weekend, former RNC chair Michael Steele, who is African-American and the co-host of the program, he discussed the specific proposal of replacing federal workers, asking Kevin Roberts, a Republican, and the head of the Heritage Foundation about who will be replacing them, Quote, talk to us about what that looks like if Heritage is calling for removing 50,000 federal employees. Who are you replacing them with, and where do they come from? I suspect a lot of those people you are talking about have been in the federal service for a long time and served not just Republican administrations, but also Democratic administrations, Michael Steele said. Kevin Roberts mentioned political contributions as he claimed federal workers contribute to the Democratic Party. See, what they want to do is they want to go through and weed out federal employees, and they only want federal employees who will be loyal to Donald Trump. And that's not how federal employees work. Federal employees are not loyal to a president. They are employees that serve the country. They stay there for 20, 30, 40 years. They serve many presidents. They're not there to serve a president. I mean, what I mean is they serve under many presidents. They're not there to serve a president. They're there to serve the country, but they work under many presidential administrations. They're not there to be loyal to one person. That's not how this works. Quote, they have, and 95% of them who give political contributions give them to the Democratic Party. Kevin Roberts said, the head of the Heritage Foundation, they can donate to whoever they want to. You can be a federal employee and make political donations. You have a right to do that. However, Michael Steele interjected and asked, quote, so you're going to fire someone because they wrote a check to a Democratic candidate? Kevin Roberts continued by doubling down on the efforts to replace civil servants, calling them unelected bureaucrats. Quote, now we're going to fire someone. He said, no, quote, no, we're going to fire someone, and the number needs to be more than 50,000. More than 50,000 people, considering there are more than 2 million federal employees because of over the last century, the radical left has seen the administration state as the fourth branch of government. They're unelected bureaucrats, but ultimately we have to devolve power from the imperial city of Washington back to the people. You listen to this guy sounds crazy as hell. Go to msnbc.com. Go to the weekend, watch the interview that they did that the TV, not the pop artist, the weekend, not him, the political show on MSNBC, the weekend. Okay, with Michael Steele and Simone and Menendez. Okay, go watch that. They interviewed Kevin Roberts Saturday, June 22nd, 2024. This dude sounds like a Trump bobblehead, full of conspiracy theories. And he's the head of the Heritage Foundation. This is the organization that created Project 2025. Not only that, the 226 federal judges that Donald Trump got confirmed, and the 3 Supreme Court judges, those judges came from lists submitted to him from the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Go research that. Okay, read the rest of this article here. This is how deep this is. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history because they both intersect. And when we study history from 1800 through 1970, and we're going to end in 1971 with Richard Nixon declaring his war on drugs after he ran for president in 1968 and won in 1968, and he won on the platform of law and order, which basically means lock up black people, protect white people. And he ran on a backlash to the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the rebellions taking place across the country, attacking the anti-poverty programs that the Great Society programs from President Johnson. He attacked a lot of those programs as well. Okay. So so how do you all like this type of information? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. This is a very, very timely class, and this helps you to better understand what's taking place in the country right now, dealing with politics, news events, people reclaiming the Confederacy. We just did a story on Roland Martin Unfiltered where 2 schools in Virginia just voted to rename the schools after Confederate heroes because they changed the names of the schools in 2020 when you had a racial reckoning taking place in this country because of the killing of George Floyd. Now you see a recalibration. Now you see people trying to go back to the way it was because they want to hold on to white supremacy. You have a lot of people that want to hold on to the Confederacy. We're going to deal with the Confederacy in the class, but nations don't name schools and don't have monuments honoring traitors to that nation. The Confederacy, these were traitors who committed treason based upon Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution defines treason. And they committed treason based upon Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. Now, a minute ago, I talked about the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. Okay, it was actually passed in 1871, right? How many people know that Traitor-in-Chief Donald Trump is being criminally prosecuted right now by special counsel Jack Smith using Section 241 of the U.S. Criminal Code? And Section 241 is the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. It's actually 1871, not 1870. How many people know this? Read this article here, okay? And once again, this is an example of how we see history and politics coming together and how historical events shape policy and laws, and then laws shape historical events. This all happened during the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877. Read this article from the Washington Post. Trump is charged under civil rights law used to prosecute KKK violence. Trump is charged under civil rights law used to prosecute KKK violence. The provision was originally adopted in 1870 and was intended to protect the newly codified rights of Black citizens after the Civil War. Well, it was the U.S. Department of Justice that was actually prosecuting these Klansmen. And the U.S. Department of Justice was created in 1870 largely to enforce the new rights of African Americans. That's during Reconstruction. Now, how many people learned all this in school? Okay, how many of your children are learning this in school? So then, when you see, this is why if you see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered and on the African History Network show, I tell you the work that Kristen Clark is doing in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, the work that Merrick Garland is doing, because the prosecution, the investigation, number one, and the prosecution of the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorists, that is the largest investigation the U.S. Department of Justice has ever done since they were created in 1870. And one of the main reasons why those domestic terrorists attacked the U.S. Capitol is because 16.9 million African Americans voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And then the day before that attack, January 5th, 2021, you had the special election in Georgia, once again, Georgia, and Senator Raphael Warnock won his election. Okay, the African-American senator, he won his election. And John Ossoff, the Jewish candidate, Democrat, he won his election, which gave Democrats a slim majority in the Senate. So there was a lot of racial animus that was driving this hatred that we saw explode in Reconstruction-like era violence and them assaulting over 140 police officers, Yet Donald Trump says he loves police officers and he backs the blue. But he sat there for 187 minutes in the White House watching it on television and did absolutely nothing. He backed the blue until the coup. That's what happened. He backed the blue until the coup. All right, so visit our website. How do you all like this type of information? Who still needs to register for this online history course? I'm about to get out of here and jump into the class and start teaching this class. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Scroll down. We have my new Juneteenth lecture there. It's a 3-hour lecture. If you register for this class, you're going to get the Juneteenth lecture in digital download format. Okay. But you can order it in DVD or digital download format. You can register for the first class I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Now, we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch these anytime. So even after the course is over with, you can still go back and watch the class. Okay. A year from now, 2 years from now, you'll still have full access and you can watch the class. This content is PG-13, so you can use this with your children. Okay, so it's not overly graphic. I don't do a lot of cursing or anything like that. And it's very visual. So there's articles that we reference, books that we reference. I show you usually the book references on the screen, so you don't have to buy any of the books if you don't want to. But register here. We're going to do a class introduction right now. I teach this at my online school, so you can register for this course. Click right here, register for full course at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We just posted a link here in the thread of the broadcast. You can also support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael. There's some like 5 or 6 fake African History Network Cash App accounts out there that I have identified, like these right here. Oh, and you can click on a Cash App link right here. Here's our QR code. Okay. And then here's our link for PayPal as well. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, finance our Sunday night show, the African History Network show. I usually do that Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our social media platforms as well. All right, we have to get out of here. Hopefully you learned a lot today. You can email me through the website if you have any questions, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll see you in class. Remember, right now is correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. And your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. Okay, so we'll see you in class. Listen to the African History Network show. And Wakanda, right now is correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.